We're into the really juicy ones now, and our countdown of the 50 best board games ever. Let's cover 20 to 11.
Welcome to BoxedMeeples. I'm Libby, this is Julian, and yes, we are getting into the crunchy stuff of our top 50 games of all time. This is going to be our 20 to 11, so of course if you have missed the 50s, the 40s, the 30s, they're all there. Do go back and have a look and see what we've mentioned so far, so that if something's missing from here on out, you'll see where it did come in, or of course let us know what we might be missing that we haven't tried yet. We did talk about how we sort of ranked our games and how we made the choices in the 50, the first of this series. So if you're interested in how we decided one over the other and how we gave them all their numbers, then do go back and check that one out.
So to kick off was a game that's inevitably going to be quite high up in my top 50 if you've been watching this channel at all. I became obsessed with Hostage Negotiator around about April last year. Then I managed to play it 50 times in a year. Because it's one of the games like a really good book. I just couldn't put it down. And I started getting different kind of abductors to change up the gameplay, and then eventually ended with a finale of playing the career mode.
I think when you started playing the career mode, that's when, I mean, I already knew that you loved the game, but that's when you were really sort of, you know, a bookworm stuck in it.
I was fully invested. It's been a while since I've had a game of just wanting to play it again and again and again. And because it's solo, I could do that.
Yeah, but you kept telling me, guess what's happened next? Guess what's happened next?
So if you don't know, obviously in this game, you are playing as a hostage negotiator. Abductor's taken someone. The type of abductor changes based on which game you're playing and which abductor pack you're using. But ultimately, you need to use cards and ration out the amount of conversation points you have to save the hostages and hopefully capture the abductor, or indeed kill them with a sniper if there's no hostages left. It's a very tense, very dark game.
And you play with models, which make it even darker.
Yeah, I thought, how can I make it darker? I have some miniatures of people being held hostage. That's going to make it better. If you enjoy Final Girl and you want a game that's slightly quicker to play, but slightly harder to play, much less forgiving, you should look towards Hostage Negotiator. I was just absolutely hooked and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, you were raving. You've already spoken about my number 20. It's Castles of Burgundy. And we are lucky enough to have that big box, great components, newer edition. And I think particularly for you, that's brought it back to life, as you said in your video. But I sort of knew from the first play, it was hard for us to pick up. It was quite dark. Couldn't see what all the tiles were doing. Felt like we were really falling behind. And then all of a sudden, oh, you could have just done this, was announced, 3/4 of the way through the game. So it kind of
it wasn't the best teach we ever had. Sour experience.
But once we got back into it, which has been more recently, I kind of knew that there was a bones of a game there that I was going to love. It was just us getting back to play it again. And now that we have done that quite a lot this year, actually. So this was unranked for me last year in my sort of 50, 100, and now it is on the list, well and truly securely on the list. It just gives so much variety, and it's such fun, and you do still get that table banter as well. Oh, there's some nice sheep there for you. I see. Oh, you've got your eye on those, have you? Oh, it looks like you're finishing your ship. So you can really see what other people are sort of leaning towards, and are you going for what's good for you, what will be a nice little engine build in terms of your province, or you can sort of nab something from under someone which will be of use for you at some point, but obviously they're clearly gunning for it, and I quite like those choices. But it's a very simple in terms of that rolling the dice and choosing something that matches up with those numbers that you've had, be it something to come into your duchy, and placing those things out, filling it out, completing those different sections to get bonuses. there's a lot of nice little nuance that works together well, and especially once you get more familiar with the game itself and you know more about all the different buildings and what benefits they're giving you. There's so many combinations to make it work. It's just a fantastic classic game. Nearly merged those two words together. That I think will be staying in our collection now that we have the fancy pretty version for a long time.
Yeah. Tapestry is a game that's always kind of clicked with me. It's, people describe it as a civilization game. It isn't. And I think approaching it with that in mind, you're going to be disappointed. What it is a track race. You're all competing to get up those tracks as quickly as possible, because ultimately they will let you have the cool buildings that you can then place on your little city map and build up your city as you go. It's all about getting a combination, getting that engine going where you can advance on multiple tracks while looking to develop and expand your city, trying to get rows and columns in place while also keeping an eye on that central board where the conflicts are taken over, and you're trying to get that area control style game going there. You've got your different eras, you're inventing things as you go, somehow inventing the light bulb, inventing rockets as you advance on there.
I loved it when I went into, I think the very first game that we played, I went into space. And ever since, every time I've tried to go into space, absolutely loved it.
But there's ultimately something so satisfying and so just wonderful about looking down and seeing your city and go, I made that. That's my doing. People whiz around the score tracks. You can score for all sorts of different things depending on what you're trying to do with your time. And I've seen people get to kind of 300 points. I'm not quite at that level yet. I don't know how they do that. But every time it does feel just tense and exciting as you're seeing people advance around, knowing that you're going to have a big leap too.
Yeah. So Res Arcana was my 15 last year, so it's still in that roundabout place. It's a game that I haven't played as much this year, but it still is demanding me to come back to it because it's just so brilliant. The way it combos together, and you're playing out your cards, and they're allowing you to sync things together to get different resources, to achieve different things, to maybe play out a dragon that's going to start stealing things from other players. And you can combo this game so much, so well. And we do have the 2 expansions for it, which it's nice to sort of dip in and out of those other things, add in those sort of pearl resource, which is really lovely. But depending on what sort of main character you have, the sort of wizard, per se, sorcerer, I'm not quite sure the term, they'll have something that they do, and then being able to sync up the rest of the things. If you do the draft at the beginning, you can try to get cards that you know are going to work together, but it might cost you a few turns to be able to get that cycle going. How many turns is it going to be until you've managed to get cards out which are gaining you resources turn after turn after turn, and what are you doing with those? And of course that's your tableau of your little engine that's working out there. And also at the end of your round, you're also going to be able to have like a special action tile. So managing what action you want when, can you suddenly convert something into gold, which is a great resource, or do you need to be able to switch a card to do something else, to use all these different one-off powers when you time which one you pick, how quickly you pass, so whether you've got the choice of those available or whether you need to wait for someone to return the one that they had from last round before you can then take it, is a really interesting timing in terms of how long you can play each round for and how you manage those cards that you have out.
Yeah, what I really like about this is you get this kind of big board game feel in quite a small footprint, really. We've managed to take it with us and actually play a game on a cruise.
Yeah, it does feel like you've got those crunchy decisions with this, which I really like.
In other videos, I talked about my love of worker placement games, but I always kind of look for a worker placement game with a twist. And I love time travel. So this is why Anachrony I've enjoyed so much. I do love this central concept of, an apocalyptic world where you've discovered the ability to time travel and you're letting your past know bad things are happening. But as you're playing through the game, you can borrow stuff from the future on the promise that you will pay it back in fear of creating some sort of paradox.
Yeah, that paradox dice. Ooh.
Yeah, and I think that's such a clever idea that just adds this suitable twist to what is already quite a complex game. You know, placing out those little mechs to explore the world. And we have obviously the miniatures for that, which makes it much more exciting. And just when you think you've got a handle on the game, suddenly you have that mid-game twist where you have to reevaluate your approach to what you're doing, hoping you've got the resources you need to deal with that.
I am not going to talk about this game too much because I'll be talking about it in a few minutes. Next up for me is Tidal Blades. It's the Heroes of the Reef part of this series. There's now sort of 3 in this series, the Banner Festival and the new one that's sort of an RPG.
Right, yeah.
Which we haven't played. But Heroes of the Reef has that worker placement about it. You can go to the different locations, gain different things. You're training out to be able to defend the reef and your community from these monsters that are coming out. And you do need to do that training before you go back.
Yeah, you don't want to take on a monster before you're prepared to activate in tears.
We have done that and we can tell you from experience. The components in this are amazing. They have really lovely pieces in them. And the artwork and the world that is created is incredible. So it has all of that lovely worker placement stuff that we really enjoy, with a theme that you feel like is making sense and looks glorious. I really love the dials that are here. So you're trying to work out where you improve your character, in what ways to really hike up the game. So as you get a little bit further in, you get a little bit more experienced, you can start upgrading things. You can start upgrading those dice so they get a little bit better and a little bit better.
I do like that evolution system where you get choose which route you're going to take the dice to make them stronger, and, you know, certain areas where you're going to focus it on. What
colorings, and that just depends on where you're going with your character and what you're trying to achieve. So there's lots of choices, there's lots of locations to go to, and whether the judge is there or not really dictates what timing you want to go to which location and what's going to be available there for bonuses like the judge.
Yeah, chaining those effects together to get a higher score. And squishy fruit.
Exactly.
I do have a fondness for Disney villainous, and obviously since its release, Star Wars villainous as well. It's one of those comforting, familiar games that always, you know, you just kind of gravitate to when you're tired. You want to play something. What's familiar? What's simple? But how short it is will largely depend on the combination of characters, because sometimes you do have a kind of game of endurance where you're both ploughing through your decks and you're fating each other to stop them getting the cards that they need. I think it's clever how the game mechanics are universal, but each of the characters you play as players very differently and doing different things, different objectives, manipulating the cards in different ways. And as you kind of get through the series, the more recent ones, we start seeing, you know, dice involved in certain characters, or, you know, King Candy's racing around the board rather than moving between the different areas in the traditional way that you get with Disney villainous.
Yeah, it is incredible what variety they've managed to bring to those characters.
And it's nice that they play in a way that reflects their character. It's not just, we thought of a nice mechanic, give that to, you know, to whichever next character is going to be. Shere Khan can have that. You know, it does play like the characters in the films do. So, you know, Mother Gothel just wants to get Rapunzel back to the tower.
Yeah.
You know, Maleficent is just trying to cast spells everywhere, and that's nice. It shows an awareness of the properties which it's based on, which is appreciated by the people who are playing Disney villainous, which is largely Disney fans. Obviously, Star Wars villainous takes up a little level, adds a level of complexity there with the ship mode, and you can travel between, you know, using that. And obviously, the Force power you have of that is a new element that you do introduce. But yes, it's a nice, comforting, familiar go-to series of games that we have played now multiple times.
Yeah, it was on my list a little further down. So Rising Sun is my favourite of the Simon games that we spoke about, the Blood Rage, Ankh series. And I think predominantly because we've played it a lot more than Blood Rage. potentially with a few more games they might switch around. We'll have to see, but I do enjoy them a lot, and I have spoken about Blood Rage already, so this is the highest one on the list at the moment. There's no getting around that. And we do love Japanese themed games as much as I love Viking games. I love how you sort of make these little friendships with people, and you can get some good deals, good things going on. But if you jump too far ahead in the game, your partner will ditch you for somebody else, and you know, might be your demise.
That alliances is really what makes it special in this game. And you know, the fact that you have that betrayal card, you can just break the alliance at any point, steal some of their workers, is really fun and good.
Yeah, there was one game that we played, and I remember I'd managed to double down on a certain type of points, and I was in a good position compared to the rest around the table, but boy did I know it from that point onwards. No one would have anything to do with me at all. But yeah, I mean, these have such great miniatures, don't they?
They really do.
It really feels great when you get one of those big beasts on your side and they're there in your area, and you know that area is going to score that round. Just great. First player and that sort of tea ceremony can be really quite important, and that blind bidding for who's going to do what. You mentioned that when you talked about this game as well, but it really is interesting thinking, what area is actually someone going to go in for? Are they just going to kamikaze kill themselves? And really throw you off balance, or are they really up?
Especially if they're combining the Sakapu scoring with cards that support that, which then you're getting victory points for it. And I love the fact that someone can put loads of money in to guarantee a victory, get that victory, and then have to give the money away.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
And it does balance things out, because it means you can't kind of ruin someone. Even if you've lost that, you're still in a position to then be able to do something else. Whereas I think some games, once you start the downward hill, you really start rolling quickly, whereas at this game gives you a chance to be back in the game. And it does force you to move around. By scoring those different areas, you can't just hunker down on your home ground, hold fast and hope for the best. You do need to start having a little eye up of someone else's area and get those scoring in, and try and strategically work out how many of those areas are you going to be able to score in this round, and maybe what will happen in the next era. Nice thought processes in this one.
So as you said, we love Japanese culture. Past Japanese stuff, that's super. Future Japanese stuff, that's even more exciting. I've had such a great time with Tamashii Chronicles of the Ascend. Obviously, it's an Awakened Realms light game, so intended to be slightly easier and accessible, but this is a narrative-focused game. Obviously, the fantastic cyberpunk setting was always going to be appealing to me. I love those kind of auto-carbon Blade Runner style properties, so it does reference those with a fun mechanic of having to move the pieces of your tokens around on the slide puzzle to be able to do your certain abilities.
That's the bit that I like. That's the bit that my brain syncs with that slide puzzle, and I can get that to work. And
as you go through, obviously you are getting new bodies, because you exist as a kind of digital presence, which means you can then jump between the different bodies, get those amazing miniatures out into the different board as it evolves, revealing different locations. You know what's roughly going to be in the mission you're doing. There's 20 to play from, but you don't know the orientation of things. And also there's multiple ways you can play through it. You're always being chased by a kind of digital evil AI, which is obviously got its omnipresence in the city. But do you take it on directly? Do you avoid confrontation? You're given those decisions throughout the game, and that unlocks different things. So it unlocks different bodies you can consume. It even unlocks different routes you can go through the overarching story. So yes, it's a really immersive experience playing through it, and plays really well too at solo with a very accessible kind of second player that you work in conjunction with. So
you did all of Kate's Diary.
Yeah, so I worked for the entire expansion just experiencing that solo. I had a fantastic time doing that. I'm keen to get it to table. Every time we have played it with new people, although it's a big campaign, you can drop in and out of different stories, so we haven't got to play the same first chapter over and over and over again, which is less annoying for us. But yes, very immersive, great storytelling, and fantastic world building.
Everdell, the complete collection, was actually my 32 last year.
Brutal,
So
mean to it.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it was that low then and that it's actually gone up this year, because we haven't actually managed to play it that much this year. We sort of, our comfort zone is to go in and play with Spirecrest. But we do like to have
it's usually base, Spire, and something else.
Yeah, another one in there, and really mixing and matching those different expansions is fun and interesting combination. But even the classic base game where you're just building out your tableau of cute little critters, trying to marry things up so they match well together with the sort of the building and the character, is where I always play.
Yeah.
So I'm always trying to get the free stuff out from doing one thing. So if you put out your building and then you find the matching critter for it, you can add that to your tableau. So you just keep trying to do that over and over again. And obviously your worker placement, but you've got to pay attention to what's happening with those other scoring conditions and missions of things that you're trying to do along the game. And they sit on that glorious tree, don't they?
Completely unnecessary tree, but so beautiful on the table. We have the wooden version now, so it's even nicer.
Yeah. And once you add expansions like Spirecrest in, they are giving you other sort of end game, store up certain amount of resources, perhaps, that it's giving you option to try to do, and you have to do them in order. So if you've got to get one to get the others, to really hike up those points. But it's a glorious looking game. Like, the characters just so adorable. And for us, I think a bit of a comfort game now, especially when we're not adding the newer expansions that we're slightly less familiar with, but we do need to take the time and play those a lot more. So yeah, it's just got that cozy, comforting feel. So I think it's always going to be somewhere here on the list.
Well, I'm going to be echoing all these words in a future video. So keeping that Asian theme going, but this time moving to China for the Great Wall. And this is an intriguing blend of kind of semi-cooperative, competitive, worker placement, tower defense game. It really is a game of two halves, because in one half of the board, which is separated by a glorious 3D wall, you're doing your worker placement after placing command cards dictating what you're going to do. But this worker placement is intriguing because you don't immediately get the benefit from placing a worker there. You have to kind of fill that space with a combination of your workers and also opponent's workers to get the resources. And these resources, then you have to work out, okay, am I going to use this to contribute to the defenses of the wall? Am I going to build up the wall, or am I going to do my own kind of personal agenda? Am I going to send troops out to fight in the conflicts, send out archers, or to people people who are going to get directly involved in battling the horde? Because you need to get involved in that battle. You need to be seen to be defending China.
It would be shameful if you were not involved in that battle.
Oh, you just get shame. A lot of shame for not being involved. And I do like that combination. Like I said earlier, I like worker placement games that do something a little bit extra on top of that. And this one looks obviously amazing on the table. Awakened Realms have got a tradition of really impressive games, not just down to miniatures. We have played it without the miniatures. We have played with, the Meeple version. Just wasn't as engaging.
I mean, the cavalry look amazing.
So we play obviously with the miniatures version, and just that huge table presence and that ever-evolving wall is quite a spectacle. And it's wonderful that there is this slightly heavier game. It's a more complex game than a lot of other ones we've talked about, but worth investing in learning that game through a slightly trickier rulebook, of course, to get those rewards from it. And that mixture of trying to read your opponent, getting involved but not too much, is an intriguing blend for a game.
I will be talking about this in another video. Planet Unknown is a game that we have loved since we first played it. And I think we've had a bit of a revival of playing it again this year, both online and in person. All those different combinations of planets and all of those kind of things. It just makes it so amazing. It was my 22 last year, so it has gone up a little bit. I will be very interested to see what the Supermoon expansion adds to this game, and obviously that lid for the lazy Susan.
The lid are very much needed.
Yeah, but it really is fantastic how it has that lazy Susan element, and you are choosing, if you're the sort of captain, you get to choose which area you pick from, and then everyone else around the table has to pick from the section that is then in front of them. So you can leave people with some very interesting choices of where the meteorites are and things like that. But so you are this sort of polyomino tile placement filling in your moon, but it's so much more than that. You have all the rules in terms of the placement and what moon you've got and how you're going to fit those together. But you've also got all those tracks to go up, and they what make it really exciting. As you start going up those tracks, some of them will let you go up another track. Some of them will let you move the rover. Some of them will unlock new abilities and new rules as you go along. Some of them will let you take cards, which will effectively either give you an instant action or give you endgame scoring conditions. And it's just such a lot of variety in this just fantastic game that's a real brain puzzler, but really easy to pick up, to learn. You can play with quite high player count as well.
And I think it's great. A kind of a two-player, it's, you see the oncoming tiles. You don't have that choice. You just see what's coming. You have to plan accordingly, knowing I need to leave spaces for that. I need to clear out the meteor for that section, or to not destroy my rover by placing a tile on top of it. So it's interesting that it does skew it at different player counts.
Yeah.
A big new entry for me next is obviously SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And I knew I was going to like this. Obviously, we do play heavier games, but the complexity that CGE often do with their big box kind of table style games is always perfect for us. And we know they're going to be fantastic artwork. It's going to be accessible rules and interesting decisions you have to make in these games.
They give you crunch, but in a way that makes it easy to come back and replay the game a lot. So we have a lot of bigger box games that I think we only play occasionally, whereas I think sometimes the CGE ones just hit that sweet spot of being able to table them that much more, but still having those nice decisions.
And what's great in SETI is it kind of based on scientific fact, with the exception of the aliens. You're launching your probes out into the universe to explore, to find stuff, which then contributes towards discovering stuff. All the while, this board is slowly rotating, and you have to anticipate how that's going to affect your future turns, where you need to be to navigate around the universe, to keep moving to places you need to go. And this game has multi-use cards, which is always brilliant. Are you going to use it for the effect, or are you going to use it for the resource? It's nice to have those no-dud cards. And there's a lot of cards in this game, and there's always something you can do with them. Once you discover the aliens, new elements are introduced into the game. It doesn't significantly change the game. It just adds a level of complexity in the kind of latter third of it. And the fact that you don't know which alien combo you're going to get is always kind of intriguing, because there's certain ones you want to see, other ones you prefer not to. But how much you engage with those aliens will largely change depending on what else you're doing and what other objectives you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, some of them might suit that kind of path that you've gone down in gameplay, and you can take some of their super duper cards and fulfill their missions, and it will really help you, whereas others you might not want to delve into that as much.
But yeah, instant win for us. As soon as one of these games where as soon as you play it on the table, we're like, yep, that's going to be a long-term game that we love.
So Yggdrasil Chronicles is a long-time game that I love. You're not so
I've
keen.
I've never enjoyed it as much as you had, partly because we played it not long after we first met. In fact, I remember getting it on like a date day, seeing it in the shops and getting it then. And I found it super hard. I'd love to go back to it actually now and go, is it as hard as I remember?
I don't think it is. And I love it. I love the little components and how they sit on the tree. I love how the tree rotates around. And even the cards are slotted into that. And where you can move to depends on what area you're in. So you can jump at different levels on the tree, or you can go around in the same level you're on, but you can't just sort of go to anywhere. So you need to plan your route to be able to fight fire management. I feel like this is. There's always something that's going to be going wrong. One of those gods is going to start kicking off and you're going to have to go and deal with it. Something's going to...
get Fenrir back in his cage.
Yeah, always getting Fenrir back in the cage. And so where you are and how you position yourself to get what you need to have done, to maybe get you some sort of magical elements. Maybe you want a hammer to help.
Might help.
Maybe. And going to manage these different crises that are happening while still getting to that end game bonus. I mean, you can take your turns in any order, which is fun. We often play it two-handed and take two characters each and sort of switch between us when we do play it too. I love it, and I love that whole into that Viking world. It's got all those familiar names that we hear in sort of culture and lore from that part of the world. I find it great. I think we just need to play it again.
I did enjoy the base game. And that was kind of fine. It's when we started venturing into the Chronicles, into the kind of legacy campaign, that I was like, "Ooh, this has got tricky." And I think I kind of, obviously it's a cooperative game, and I felt I let you down as a cooperative partner. Just wasn't good enough. Didn't have enough to bring to the table at that point. So yeah, let's play it again.
And we'll see how we go.
Yeah, maybe I'll be better for you.
But I mean, that tree is fantastic.
Now, I'm not going to say too much about Batoku because I know this is going to be higher on your list. No doubt in a future video. It's going to be in your top 10. I'll be very surprised if it isn't.
It was in my top 10 last year and I have not yet mentioned it. So it would be surprising if it dropped that far. But
so Batoku is a dice manipulation game with fantastic artwork. You look at this massive board and it kind of looks like a big Lacerda game. It looks excessively complicated with so many places you can go. But at its core, it's just a middle section. You know, you're placing your dice, you need to get them over the river to decrease their strength, to then do a subsequent action at the top half of the board. That might be going down little routes and tracks and getting more spiritually aware. It may be building up your hands and trading out your Batoku cards, you know, getting those little dudes along the track at the bottom. So many different decisions you could make, largely depending on what your opponent has activated. Have they brought more to the table? You know, activating those will reward your opponent as well as you. Is that something you want to do? Is the benefit going to be strong enough to help give your opponent a helping hand in that way? So it's a big, crunchy game that at its core, you only have to think about where you're going to move your dice.
It's very much a point salad. You can choose to do anything that you want, can't you?
Certain things are going to be better for you and to suit the occasion more. But it's hard not to love it because it looks beautiful. So many games that say they're inspired by Studio Ghibli style films. This certainly is. It has that kind of Spirit of the Forest vibe about it, not least because of the turn tracker you're moving around is gorgeous. Is fantastic. So yes, that theme, that beauty of it all does draw you in. And yes, it's not as complicated as it looks. It's very enjoyable to play, and I know you absolutely love it. So
yeah, I'll talk about it next time. I'll be brief about it because you have thoroughly covered Anachrony in this video. It was my number 8 last year, so it has slipped just a little bit, not too much. I think, again, we just need to play frequently. I would love to get some more of the different expansions. So if you know anything about those and which one's good, bad and ugly, please do let us know in the comments because I'd be very interested to hear more about that. We do have the exosuits, which you can't play the game without those. No, and it is key as to what kind of worker you put into them, isn't it? And how you manage those workers, which I don't think that you mentioned in your one, but you want the right kind of people doing the right kind of thing to help you on your way, and to manage which ones will be coming back around to be able to use them effectively. It is really interesting having that sort of whole time travel element in a game that's, not a Back to the Future game. that is crunchy decisions and that paradox, and whether that's going to bite you.
You can just get too greedy. Just
yeah.
help yourself too much is never going to pay off, is it?
And I do like that you do have that slight difference in the factions that you're playing as. You've got variety in those factions as well. They're kind of going after something different. One's a bit more war-y. One's all about technology and learning and things like that. So there's some variety in there as well. But it is, as I said, I won't rant on too much because you've described what is amazing about the game already, and it is fantastic.
Now, it feels like I'm just picking on your favourite games here. Don't get angry, because this is the highest Yado has ever been on. And I think it's now the 5th year we've done this.
Right.
It's never been this high.
Okay. We did have a fun game of it.
Yes,
year.
I was going to say we got a chance to teach for Lisa from Fun with Boxes what was last year at least your favourite game. It's always kind of consistently been your favourite game. I don't know if it will be this year. We'll wait and see. Probably might be.
It's in the next list. That's all I'm saying.
But yeah, so Yado is a fantastic worker placement with very strict rules on those kind of placements, and you're competing to do missions, and the complexity of the missions will reflect how well rewarded you are. There's obviously the kill the Shogun mission is your prestige mission. If you can do that, you're likely going to win the game. There's no way of avoiding that. It's going to be so lucrative for you to do it, but to achieve it, all the ducks need to be perfectly in line. Not just a little bit. Everything needs to be exactly where it needs to be.
Yes, yeah. And you need to have got yourself so fully kitted up, so fully manned up that you're at your max before you can even attempt that mission.
But if you achieve it, that's glorious. But generally, your missions, you need the right combinations of workers, the right kind of weapons to be in the right place, and then to achieve the mission. And each of those missions has flavor text on, and we would never play the game without reading that, because it just feeds into this world of corruption and darkness and all sorts of shenanigans going on in this Edo era Japan. That enriches it so much. You've got the deluxe master set, so we have all sorts of different components. I think we played with the majority of those, if not all of them. And we have our favourite ones. We won't play it without having, the certain workers that have the special abilities. The tea ceremony mode is fun as well. Yado is such a fantastic game, and I can see why you love it so much. And let's face it, 12 is pretty high on the best games ever list, the highest it's ever been. You can't be too cross with me this time.
I might just do the rest of the list like this. So Star Wars Rebellion. Last year it was my number 6, and it has dropped a little bit.
Yeah.
And for those that watch the channel regularly, you'll know that we always say how we religiously play it on Boxing Day as an annual tradition. It was the first game we ever played together. It was on Boxing Day, and we do this every single year. This year, you found my base quite quickly.
Yeah, you're pretty rubbish rebels. And I don't know. Yeah, I think within 4 turns.
I had not prepared to move my base because I didn't think I'd be needing to move my base for another couple of turns, maybe 3. And there you were, popped up out of nowhere, called me out of my base and destroyed me. So I think that's why
that's why I soured it. Well, I did have a lucky combo of turns that did allow me, and I know from playing this, obviously we played it a lot together, I know the likely places you're going to place, it's always going to be on the outer rim, very unlikely and then you're trying to choose thematic places. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was on Mandalore, or sometimes you do it on Hoth because it's thematically relevant, but it's going to be one of those combination of things. I read you well this year.
You did, yeah. So I think that is just the reason I'm still sour of that game as to why it's dropped slightly. Probably shouldn't have done the list quite so close to playing the
For a
game.
veil of tears.
But I mean, it's still very high on my list. It's an excellent game. It's very thematic. It does feel like you're in that world. And when you play as the Jedis, you are on your toes. And you just keep seeing the Imperials with those ships on that track, like a cool down track till they're coming out. And there's huge ships and there's Death Stars there getting closer and closer. And you know they're just going to get placed out on the board. And holding on and sort of managing to do these sort of missions. It is so thematic. It is a fantastic game. If you like Star Wars, you feel like you're immersed in that universe. And we won't play without the expansion.
No.
I think it improves the battle so much more. But of course, you get some of those extra sort of Rogue One characters in there as well, which add a little nuance and some different little icons on their character things. But yeah, it is a fantastic game. I'm just still sour.
You're just angry.
Yeah.
As we move towards the end, there's going to be some twists and turns in this journey. And what was number 4 is now number 11, which is actually not that big a drop in the whole scheme of things.
It feels a lot when it comes out of the top 10.
When it's dropped out of the top 10, I never thought Eclipse would not be in my top 10. It's just other space-based games have come along, and they're more recent, and I'm very excited about playing them. But I do obviously still love Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy. It does feel like playing a big space opera. You know, as you're each taking your factions, you're deciding what you're going to do with them. Are you going to build up your ships to create an arsenal of heavily gunned mercenaries you can send out and just destroy? You're all going to head towards the central section, get to that command core in the middle, and know that controlling that area is going to be the route to success. Or are you just going to be peaceful and, you know, explore the fringes of it, avoiding conflict, getting on with those ancients,
Exactly.
finding some artifacts? But there's always that excitement about passing around the upgrades between the players and adding those to the boards. And then the excitement of 2 fierce machines, 2 great big spacecrafts coming together and not knowing the outcome. You don't get in many other games. And you can't read it. You can't predict who's going to do what and when. So just as a spectator in these battles is exciting as well. If another game hadn't come along, this probably would still be in my top 10 because I do love that universe, that experience, and getting to play it with people who know the games. You just get straight into it and get going and have a night of just fun space adventures is always going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it is a great game. Probably too low on my list, if we're honest, but it's a great game. So my number 2 last year, Scythe, has dropped just out of the top 10. It is a fantastic game to get out with, especially with different player counts. We love playing it at 2, and it's a bit of a different game to when we play it at a large player count, but equally as fantastic. It's great to do that syncing up and being able to do the bottom action. You can get out there and you can do all your upgrades. You can get your mechs out. You can start traveling to different places, jumping through wormholes, surprising people. And of course, you're trying to get all your resources there. It is a fab game, but I think one of our key moments that we had with Scythe, I think it must have been one of the first campaigns that we ever played together, was Rise of Fenris. And I hadn't played some of the, like the pandemic campaigns that you'd played at that point, even though I'd done a lot more gaming than you at that point. So for me, it was one of the first kind of campaign games, new things happen rather than just a one-off session. And I just found it great how each game we played, something new and different was being added and happening. Obviously, there's some orange stuff for those that have played it before that's quite interesting. And I think that entirely changed the way you play games. It does. You approach gaming, especially aggressive gaming, in a certain way prior to that, and it just opened up a world of play for you.
I do like the orange now.
But yeah, it's always going to be one of our favourite games, and I think we had just played it quite a lot, but it hasn't seen the table that much lately, which is why it's just slipped.
I think it's going to
down this year.
If we had played it in December, it would have pinged straight back up again.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautiful design. It's glorious. Yeah, and we have those lovely components for it. It's got the sort of double layer boards. It's got everything that you'd want in a board game.
That's why I'll be talking about it in the next video.
And that's it from this video.
If you do want to make sure you see our top 10, it's all headed towards this. Make sure you are subscribed and ring the bell for a notification of when that goes live. And let us know in the comments, have we shocked you? Has this been anything you weren't expecting? Do let us know in the comments down below. And can you predict what will be in our top 10? Let us know.
We would love to hear from you. But yes, do get in touch and subscribe. And we will see you in the top 10. Bye.